Okay, so this is a preset I've gotten a few requests for. I've been a little leery about trying to tackle this just because his tone is so iconic, but a lot of people were asking for kind of a Brian May type of preset. And so what I've done is I've done my best to create a preset that's mimicking his rig and it's trying to get that sound, but know a couple things. One, I don't have a red special guitar. It was funny, every time I looked online to try to look at how other people were doing Brian May tones, they always pulled out, one of the red special Brian May guitars. And I don't have one of those on hand, so I'm not even sure which one of my guitars would most sound like that guitar. So we're gonna do our best with a Strat style guitar that has a humbucker in the bridge, and we're gonna go with that. The other thing is, his rig isn't really very complicated. It's mostly, you've got the amp, which is the cranked AC30. He is running a wet, dry, wet. We'll go through that. He's got the treble booster on the front end, and he's got a chorus and then some reverb and delay in the back. Not a lot of stuff going on here. And as usual, the simpler the tone, the harder it is to get perfect on a preset because it comes down so much to the guitar and the hands of the player and things like that. And in Brian May's case, the coin that he's using to pick or whatever else is in there. So we're going to do our best here today. I've got a couple presets. One I'm using AC30s on. The other one I tried, hey, what if we use the Matchless DC30 and see how that sounds? So we've got two presets here, and I'll share both of them on the Cortex Cloud for you to grab and play with. But let's go through what we've got here. So let's start with our dry channel. So most people know Brian May is a big user of the Vox AC30. So we're using an AC30 here. We're using the normal one. We've got the bright switch off. I've got a little bit of tone cut off here, and volume is almost at 100%. And then I'm running that through the 2x12 that goes with the Vox C30. So the dry signal, which is straight up the middle, and you can see here, we've got a wah, we've got our treble booster, and then we're hitting our split. We'll talk about the wet paths later, and then this is the dry path. Amp, cab, out. So that's just the amp, just a cranked Vox, and you can turn down the volume of the guitar a little bit. Get a little bit of a kind of a spanky, cleanish tone. So that's a lot of the tone there. And then what you do is you add on the front, he uses a Range Master treble booster. And so I went into the Cortex Cloud and I looked at captures the folks had done, and I found this one, Frank's BYOC Range Master. This is the one that I thought worked best. So we turned that one on. Again, here's the dry with the treble booster in front of it. So that's kind of adding that top end, pushing that amp a little bit, giving you extra grit. So it's there to use. So I think that's a good foundation for our sound. And then what we're doing is we've got this split here. I'll turn that back on. And I'm routing that to row 3. So if you haven't seen my video on setting up wet, dry, wet presets, this is pretty typical for how I would do this. The dry preset will stay on line 1. We'll split from line 1 to line 2 just to get down into 3 and 4. So row 2, I really don't put any blocks on here at all typically. And then we get down to line 3, and we have a few more things that go to both wet paths. So in this case, I've got a chorus, and I'm using the chorus engine. And I think the main thing here for the chorus engine for Brian May tones is that the rate is pretty low and the delay is really low. So it's kind of taming the swirliness of the chorus, so to speak, by bringing that delay all the way down. And it's really just kind of adding some fullness to it. The depth also is not very high. It's only on 40. And then I've got the width at 100. So I'm pushing the width as far left and right as I can. And then we've got a split here, and we're doing the stereo split to make sure we split left and right paths into the 2 wet amps. And then for the mixer, you can see we pan A all the way to the left and B all the way to the right. So we're panning into our left and right amps. And both of those are Vox C30s. And I've got them cranked all the way. I do have the tone cut set slightly different on each one. Again, I'm just trying to vary the sound of the 2 amps just to make them sound a little bit separate. And then we've got our Vox 2x12 here. And then from there, we've got 2 delays running. One is kind of a bass delay, which is a dual delay. I'm running 300 and 400 millisecond. Mixes at 50% because this is a wet path. Feedback's at 25. So not tons of delay when you consider that these are the wet paths, but enough to get a good sense of ambience. And then I've got a hall reverb on the end. Again, the mix is about halfway, not super high for a pure wet path. And then I have a second delay that we can use that is a dual delay, but it's got a longer delay here. You can see 450, 900. And that's for some of those kind of Brian May sounds where he's got like really long delays on there. So we'll try that out when we get to it. I've got this preset to play in stomp mode. So pretty much what we got here is A is turning on and off a wah. So sometimes it uses a wah. We're not going to demo that today. I think everybody knows what the wah sounds like in the quad Cortex. I'm using the crying wah. You turn it on and off, hook it to expression pedal, you're good to go. B is the range master treble booster. E is the chorus, and then G is switching between our two delays. So let's hear what the wet paths sound like. And for this, I'm actually going to turn off all the ambience in our chorus for now. So this is, we've got all three paths, our dry path going center, and then our left and right wet paths, but there's no effects on the wet paths yet. It sounds like this. When we add in the chorus, you can hear that's pretty subtle. It's just kind of making it sound a little bigger. And again, I think a lot of that is because the delay time is so low. And then if we turn on the regular dual delay, and then our reverb, so that is the Brian May preset with the AC30s. Like I said, it's pretty straightforward. Once you have the wet, dry, wet set up, it's pretty much just the amp with the treble booster and then some chorus on the back end. But I think we're kind of close as I feel like I can get it. And then if we want to kick in a longer delay. And we can probably push up the mix on that delay just a little bit. So that is what I'm calling my Brian May-ish preset, the one where we're using the AC30s. And so then what I did was, because the tone is so dependent on the amps, I wanted to try out a different kind of amp because, in my opinion, the AC30 model on the quad Cortex is not great. And this might be just because I'm not much of a Vox guy, but I thought, let's try the new Matchless D30 models and see how those do. So what I did, I landed on using the Match More, which is the Matchless D30 channel 1. And as you can see here, I got it cranked. And I left the bass at about halfway, but I am pulling down the treble quite a bit. So let's go ahead and turn off the wet paths on this preset, and we'll just hear the dry amp. So not quite as much mid-range honk as the AC30. For cabinets, I'm using the Match D30 Sig B on the dry. And then on the wet paths, I'm actually using the Match cabinets with the V30s to give it a little more of a mid-range kick. But we've got our same chorus, our same delays, our same reverb. You can see the stomps are set up exactly the same. So the structure of the preset is exactly the same. All I did was switch out the amps and cabinets. So that's the Matchless. I think we need to bring up the dry signal a little bit. Just make that one. That works. So overall, I think I like the AC30 preset better. Versus the DC30. So I'll put both of these presets up on my Cortex Cloud account. Feel free to grab them. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you feel like I got in the ballpark here. And if any of you guys have a Red Special guitar, I'd love to hear how this preset sounds with that guitar and whether or not it's really getting that Brian May Queen tone. The link to my Cortex Cloud account is in the description below, so you can go there to grab these presets or any of my other presets. And as always, thanks for watching.